Binding of Isaac is a remarkably addictive, top-down roguelike dungeon crawler. It's a Flash-based video game with infinitely replayable gameplay and its own distinct, unique, grotesque art style. First and foremost, it's important to note, The Binding of Isaac is a really dark and disturbing game with a storyline to match. It's full of Western-based religious references that can offend people, and you play as a defenseless naked child that kills monsters by crying on them. This game should only be played by mature individuals. The Binding of Isaac is the story of Isaac and his mother. God talks to Isaac's mother. He tells her, her son is corrupted by sin, so she has to remove all of his possessions. He then tells her to lock Isaac in his room to confess his sins. After that, he tells her to kill Isaac to prove she loves God over everything else. Isaac, seeing his mother approach his room with a knife, decides to escape to the basement through a trapdoor in his floor. The Binding of Isaac is based off of the Bible story of the same name. Basically the story of Abraham and his son Isaac, where God commands Abraham to sacrifice Isaac to show his devotion. Abraham is stopped at the last second by an angel, and God accepts a ram as a sacrifice instead. Back to the game. Once Isaac jumps down the trapdoor, he is placed in the basement. This is where the game starts. The player must navigate their way, room by room, killing monsters and collecting items. The goal of the game is to make it to the end and kill Isaac's mother. After this is accomplished, additional areas following the boss fight are unlocked, making the game longer in subsequent playthroughs. The Binding of Isaac is a roguelike game, meaning the player always starts off at the start of the game with no option to save or load and only a single life. There are a few exceptions to this, where long-term progress can be made in the game. Beating the game, as well as doing a few obscure tasks, reward the player with some permanent progress, such as unlockable characters and new items that can be found in future playthroughs. In The Binding of Isaac, the player controls Isaac, or an unlockable character. They can walk in 8 directions, and shoot tiers in 4 directions. Movement and shooting are independent. The game plays sort of like a dual-stick shooter. It controls well. Shooting and avoiding damage is easy and intuitive. Some of the time, when there's too much going on screen, the game will slow down and chug due to the technical limitations of Flash. This is especially true on higher resolutions and higher quality settings. It's also possible to sometimes lose your character's position on screen, and take damage when there's too much visual noise. The play space in The Binding of Isaac consists of groups of randomly generated room layouts referred to as floors. Once a player beats the boss room on a floor, they can proceed deeper down into the depth of the game and into the next randomly generated floor. There are 6 floors in total leading up to the mom boss fight. Along the way downwards, the player will encounter a variety of rooms. The most common rooms are monster rooms. They consist of monsters that must be defeated in order to unlock the doors to proceed onwards. Every floor also has a treasure room, a boss room, a shop, and a secret room. As the player clears rooms and basically plays the game, they will encounter a variety of items. Items range from consumables, to one-time use, to items that grant passive and active bonuses. A lot of the fun in The Binding of Isaac comes from the items. Different item combinations make for different and fun play sessions. The item system is comparable to the concept of character builds in role-playing games. The most common thing a unique item does is augment the projectile the player fires, but really, anything can happen when the player picks up an item. The Binding of Isaac has some questionable design philosophies behind it. Most things in the game are based off of trial and error. The player will not know what an item does, or how a mechanic works the first time, unless they pick it up or jump headfirst into a potentially dangerous situation. The Binding of Isaac is sort of like a retro game in this regard. It's not afraid to alienate the player a little bit, and even cost them some lives. The game simply never explains things, making it one of those games that are often played with a wiki web page open in a separate window, so that the player can reference items and mechanics as they go. The Binding of Isaac has one piece of downloadable content, sort of comparable to an expansion pack. It's called The Wrath of the Lamb. Whether or not to purchase this DLC is up to the player, as there are negatives and positives. The main negative to getting it is that once purchased, the original vanilla game is no longer playable. Once a person owns the DLC, they can't play The Binding of Isaac without it. On the other hand, the DLC adds substantial new and interesting content to the game. Some examples of what the DLC offers are over 100 new items, new areas with new sets of enemies and room layouts, new bosses and boss variants, the trinket system, challenge mode, and 2 new endgame areas. My score for The Binding of Isaac is 9 out of 10. To be as blunt as possible, the game is amazing and worth buying. It's fun and very replayable. Despite what was said before, the downloadable content is a great addition to the experience and is also recommended. Thanks for watching! Like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more videos like this one. Au revoir!